Hi, my name is Elke Feuer. I'm an author and a fiction book coach, and welcome to my channel. Now, in this video, I'm going to share with you, this is part one of finding time to write, and this is part of a 4-part series that I am doing. So make sure to hit that subscribe button if you are a writer who is struggling to find time to write, so that you don't miss out on any of the videos. Now, finding time to write is something that every writer has struggled with at one point in their writing, or continually struggle with. With my own personal journey, it took a pivotal turn when I took an online course with Kelly L. Stone called Find Time to Write. And there were two really big things that stood out for me. And the first one was that she had you track your time daily, like every single thing that you did. That was mind-blowing, and I'll share with you how and why later in this video. The second thing that stood out for me in her class was a statement that she made that was, if something is important, you make time for it. So simple, but so true. So in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it into 2 sections. The first is tracking your time, and the second is reviewing your time. So for the tracking your time, it's actually, I decided to break it into 2 parts, which is a quick way to track your time and a long way to track your time. And the reason why I did it that way is because, let's face it, sometimes when we're in that zone and we just want to know what's a quick way that I can find time to write and get started, versus I'm not really sure how to start, let me just do something different. Okay, so that is 2 versions or 2 types that I offer or recommend for my clients when they're looking to find time to write. So with regards to the quick version, what that looks like is basically taking a 1-week calendar and mapping it out, writing out every single thing that you do in your calendar from Sunday to Saturday, okay, in time blocks based on what you know that where you spend your time and what time commitments you have. And you can do this in a physical calendar or an electronic calendar. The truth is, it doesn't matter, whatever works best for you. And the next thing you want to do is look at your available times, because you've mapped out where you spend your time. Where are times that are available that you can quickly identify what times are available that you can write. The second thing you want to do is you want to assess your creative times. Now, this is a little bit harder with the quick version, and what I mean by that is, what are the times that you're most high energy, that you feel the most energized to do things, that you get your second wind? Are you a morning person? Are you a night owl? Is just to sort of think about that. Now, if you're not familiar with what those times are or what that looks like, then I would recommend the long version. All right, so that is just a quick and dirty way that you can do it as far as figuring out what times that you have available to write. And the great thing about the quick method, as I mentioned, is that it allows you to be able to just identify where you've got time to write and just dive in and take advantage of those times that you have available and get to what we all want to do, right, which is writing. Now, the long version is really for people who perhaps have a really crammed schedule, or your schedule is so crazy you don't know what you do or where you spend your time, right? Or maybe you just want a more realistic overview of where specifically you spend your time and what you're doing in those times. And same with the short version, you use a weekly calendar, but this time what you're going to do is, for the whole entire week, is to track what you do in real time. Now, this is my favorite version and the one that I always recommend, because but before I go on to the benefits of that, let me just take a step back and just go through with the calendar and what you do with the long version. So track what you do in real time. And while you're doing that, some things that you want to consider is your creative and flow times. And those are the times that you feel most energized and most creative, most inspired to actually do either creative things. This might be maybe the time of the days that you get story ideas or ideas for your characters, or your story is talking to you So those kind of things, and make sure to highlight those on your calendar in real time as those times happen, because this is really helpful to help you with what your flow or creative times are. Anything you think of that needs to be added that perhaps is not during the week while you're tracking your time in real time, but you may think, oh crap, I gotta remember that I have this next week, or I have this every 2 weeks. Just things like that is just to make a note of those on your calendar, because those are things that are going to be important, and I'll talk a little bit about those in another sort of bonus section, which is what I like to call variables. All right. The wonderful thing about the long version is it really helps you to identify two main things. One, where you're actually wasting time. I know for me, when I did this exercise and when I do it consistently, as far as reviewing my time, if I feel like I'm not maximizing my time and I do this, is how much time I'm actually wasting. Because it's one thing to know that you waste time, or to say flippantly, well, you know, I worked all day, I need to relax, I need to have downtime. But when you track your time in real time and what you're doing in those times, and you start to add up how much time you're actually spending watching TV, scrolling through social media on your phone, and you add that up for the whole week, for me it was like, oh crap, I wasted 4 hours or 6 hours in the week, and I could have used one of those hours to write and made progress, and still had 5 hours to waste, right? So that is, for me, the real eye-opener, and one of the things that I find with my clients as well too, because too many times we think we're busy, or we think we're only wasting like an hour here, an hour there, but then when we add up that time at the end of the week, it's just a complete game changer, and you realize that perhaps maybe you do have time to write. So the next great thing about the long version and tracking your time in real time is that it allows you to know what your flow times are, the times that they're your most high energy times. And those are times that you can look at, how can I utilize those times as my writing times? Because a lot of times it might be that you're trying to squeeze your writing time in an available time that may not be the best fit. But when you know what those flow times are and you utilize them, wow, such a difference. And you're actually in the mood to write at that time, and you're taking advantage of that time when you're most creative and most high energy. The second part is review your time. And when you do that, there's some things that I like to have you consider. The first is to identify any possible roadblocks, or not possible, actual roadblocks, or if you're doing the quick version, possible roadblocks that might come up, whether they're inside of your control or outside of your control, and just making note of those. Some other things you want to do when you're reviewing your time is to ask some hard questions. And some of those questions include, am I really the reason why I'm not writing? Sometimes we think, oh, we're so busy, when the truth is we're the reason why we're not writing, whether it's just that we're wasting time, or maybe it's that we need to say no more. And just thinking, am I the reason when you're reviewing your schedule? Is it me? That's really helpful to know. Second question to ask yourself is, what's the cause or the reason why I'm neglecting my writing time? As I said, it could be that, oh my gosh, you really are really busy and you just don't have time when you think you do. Or maybe it is, as I said earlier, you need to say more no. And if writing is something that you want to make a priority in your life, that maybe you need to start saying no, and you can start to identify what areas you can or need to say no to, so that you can free up that time to write. The other question you want to ask yourself is, what steps can you take to improve or change the situation so that you do have time to write? Now, I'm not saying to go crazy and make up a whole bunch of different things that you know that you can do or that you should do. what I'm saying is just pick one or two things, because I think sometimes that we know all the things that we need to do, and even listing out and trying to identify all those things we do can actually create overwhelm, where we think, well, I need to do this, I should do that, I should do that. And next thing you know, you're just like, it's too much, I can't do it. So I don't want you to do that. I want you to just take one or two steps or things that you can do to make things different and to free up that time so that you can find and have time, make time, do right. All right, so my favorite part, variables. And this is something that I know clients that I've dealt with in the past have struggled with, and also myself included, more recently in the last couple of years. Those variables, for instance, could be something like your schedule changes from one week to the next, whether it's because you do shift work, or like me, I have shared custody, so one week I have my kids, one week I don't. So my schedule looks completely different each week. So that's a variable. It might be that perhaps you work part-time or full-time, or whatever that looks like for you. Those are some possible variables. All right, so when that happens, I'm going to share with you some things that I've done personally that will hopefully help you on what you can do to deal with those variables. The first thing that I did was change your writing times to match the change. The truth is, you don't have to stick to the same schedule all the time. And I know this can be difficult, especially if you like to stick to the same routine, because the truth is, the same routine builds good habits. But at the same time, you don't want to neglect your writing because you said, oh, my schedule's changed, so I just can't do it, rather than looking at opportunities or looking at how you can change to fit the change, right? So that's something that you can look at. Like, for instance, for me, one of the things that I ended up doing is, normally I would wake up at 5, but when I have my kids, I have to leave earlier in the morning. So I changed my wake up times to 4:30, so I gave myself an extra half an hour. So that is an option of how you can change when your schedule changes. Another thing you can do is just skip the week, or skip that day, or skip whatever that looks like to fit it. And, you know, the truth is that it happens, and sometimes if that's going to make it easier and less stressful for you, then maybe that's what you need to do. And I know I've done that sometimes when I've just got so much going on with my kids with me that there is just no way, even waking up at 4:30, or maybe I ended up having to do something late in the evenings, and waking up at 4:30 doesn't allow me to get the sleep that I need. Then, you know, it's one thing to sacrifice every once in a while, but when you have to do it on a consistent basis and you run yourself down, been there, done that, not a good option. So maybe you just need to say, okay, I need to skip this week or this writing time that I have carved out, and I have to wait till the next one, okay? One of the other things that you can do is to look at alternative times, like maybe, as I mentioned, waking up earlier. Maybe it's one of the things that I did, and thankfully my kids were young enough at the time that they didn't know the difference, is that I moved my kids' bedtime up half an hour earlier. Now, they couldn't tell time, so they didn't know the difference, right? So I was able to do that, and that gave me more time in the evenings so that I could still write and get to bed at a decent time, right? So that's an option. Maybe if you're, like I said, a morning person, maybe you wake up a little bit earlier in the morning. If you're an evening person, you know, go to bed a little later, if that works for you. Or another thing that I did is that I would leave work when my ex would, when it was his turn to take the kids to school, I would go to the coffee shop a little bit earlier before work, and I would use that as my writing time. I also utilized lunch times when my schedule didn't fit any other times, and I would take my lunch time, and then that's when I would write. So there's different alternatives, and you have to pick ones that really fit your life, because the truth is, trying to for me to say to you, you should do it this way when my life isn't your life, is just, it's basically setting yourself up for failure. And I see a lot of writers that do that. They're trying to fit in something into their life of somebody else, what they're doing. And when it doesn't work for them, then they feel like it's them or there's something wrong with them. When the truth is, it just doesn't fit their life. And maybe it just requires a tweak or two, or maybe just something completely different, right? So that's something to consider as well too. So what about you? Do you have a system or something that you use to help you to find time to write or reclaim your time to write? I would love to hear about it in the comments. Thank you so much. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss the other 3 videos in the series, so that you can learn some strategies on how you can find time to write. See you in the next video.